Today, we will review the Duplication of Benefits Calculation Form, which, effective October 18, 2020, is one of the General Land Office's required documents for applicants of voluntary buyout or acquisition programs. A hyperlink to the GLO's Duplication of Benefits or DOB Calculation Form can be found on the Texas General Land Office website at recovery.texas.gov. To locate the document, go to the local buyout and acquisition program page, which is linked below in the description section of this video. Scroll down to the left side checklist section under Applicant Information and click on Duplication of Benefits DOB Calculation Form link. Once you click on the link, your computer will download the fillable document. Please note you will need Microsoft Excel to view and edit the document. There are multiple federal funding sources that can be used for disaster recovery, such as CDBG, FEMA, and SBA. The Robert T. Stafford Disaster Assistance and Emergency Relief Act, as amended, prohibits entities, including households, from receiving a duplication of benefits for disaster recovery funding. A duplication of benefits, or DOB, occurs when a person, household, business, government, or other entity receives financial assistance from multiple sources for the same purpose, and the total assistance received for that purpose is more than the total need for assistance. To be considered a beneficiary of CDBG-DR assistance and therefore need to calculate duplication of benefits, the applicant must be receiving a benefit that is greater than the current fair market value of their home. Therefore, anyone receiving pre-disaster value or post-disaster value with incentives or is in a federal match program is considered a beneficiary and must reduce any assistance received in order to avoid a duplication of benefit. To comply with DOB requirements, all applicants of the local buyout or acquisition program, regardless of whether they received additional assistance or not, or if they are receiving pre- or post-disaster value, are required to complete the Duplication of Benefits Calculation Form. Any applicant that will receive pre-disaster value on their home, incentives, or is in a match program will have to fill out the form in its entirety in order to demonstrate that the total assistance received for the purpose of disaster recovery of the home is less than or equal to the total need. However, the few applicants that are receiving post-disaster value on the home and will not receive any incentives and are not in a FEMA or SBA match program for the buyout of the home will only have to complete Section 1, Section 2, Number 1, and Section 3. The other parts of Section 2 can say NA, as the applicant is not considered a beneficiary to the program and does not need to calculate assistance received to avoid a duplication of benefit. If an applicant has multiple properties they are applying for buyout, they will have to fill out the form for each property and be specific about how much of each assistance award is going to that specific address. For this video, we will use an example of a fictional applicant and location to explain the form. In our example, the applicant is of a buyout program and they are receiving pre-disaster value for the home. Therefore, the form will be completed in its entirety. The completion of this form in its entirety is a phased approach. Initially, the subrecipient will complete the form with the available information from the applicant and their application using the application, backup documentation, assistance from the applicant, and tax assessor's website to complete the information in the form using estimated numbers. The form during this phase will be used for the eligibility review to work with the applicant to determine if the estimated value that can be offered to the homeowner is what they are looking for to participate in the program and to determine eligibility based off duplication of benefit. The second phase is after the appraisal is complete and the subrecipient knows the final fair market value to be offered to the applicant and the total assistance received has been confirmed through the eligibility review. In the second phase, the form will be updated with the final numbers and signed by the applicant. This final form will also be placed in the left side file. Section 1 of the form is for the subrecipient and applicant information. To complete Section 1 of the form, the subrecipient should insert the subrecipient name. Then the subrecipient should input the GLO contract number. The contract number is located at the top of the first page of the GLO contract. Then, in the Applicant ID section, the subrecipient should input the Tiger project ID. This number will be generated in Tiger when the applicant's project is created and the application is uploaded. This can be left blank with a submission in Tiger, but should be completed on the final form. Then the subrecipient will input the applicant's full name as it appears on their ID provided with the application. Then the subrecipient will include the co-applicant's name if there is a co-applicant applying to the program. Then the subrecipient will input the address of the buyout or acquisition property in question. Section 2 of the DOB Calculation Form is to calculate the maximum eligible award to avoid a duplication of benefits. In number 1, the subrecipient and applicant will work together to determine and input the total estimated need of the homeowner to buy out or acquire the property. The total estimated need only includes the value for the acquisition of the property. It does not include any relocation or incentive needs. Again, during the first phase of completing the document, this is just an estimated value. The total estimated need can be determined by looking up the property on the local tax assessor's website or har.com. Once the appraisal is completed, this value will change to the just compensation value that was determined based on the appraisal and review appraisal. For our example, the applicant found on the tax assessor's website that their property is currently estimated at $250,000. Note, after completing number 1, if the applicant is receiving post-disaster value, no incentives, and is not in a match program, then they can put NA in the rest of the form until they get to Section 3 and sign. All applicants receiving pre-disaster value, incentives, or are in a match program will continue with the entire form. In number 2 of the form, the subrecipient will list all assistance that the applicant identified as all assistance received for the property for recovery from the disaster being applied for or any subsequent disaster. For example, if our applicant is applying for the Hurricane Harvey program due to damage received to the home during Hurricane Harvey, but they live in a repetitive flood area and they have received FEMA assistance for repairs to the home during the 2015 floods and again after Harvey, and are receiving assistance from FEMA for the Texas severe winter storms, they would only input assistance information for Hurricane Harvey and the Texas severe winter storms because that is the qualifying disaster event for this program and all subsequent disaster events. In order to identify the amounts of assistance received by the applicant, the initial application should have included copies of the assistance letters received from FEMA, the SBA, or insurance. If the applicant is unable to locate the letters to demonstrate the assistance amount, they should reach out to the funding agency to request a copy of the letter. Our applicant received $20,000 for repairs to the home during Hurricane Harvey and has been approved for and is receiving $5,000 for repairs to the home after the Texas severe winter storms. Therefore, they input $20,000 plus $5,000 or $25,000. The amounts of assistance noted in number 2 should be separated by the type of disaster assistance received. In the first row, an A is for the subrecipient to list any received from FEMA for the disaster recovery to the buyout or acquisition property. For example, FEMA hazard mitigation assistance, housing assistance, other needs assistance, etc. 2B is for subrecipients to list all small business administration loans the applicant received for disaster assistance to the property, also known as SBA. In our example, the applicant has not received any SBA loans, so they put $0. In 2C, the subrecipient should input any insurance proceeds the applicant received for the property in relation to the disaster being applied for or any subsequent disasters. When a property owner has an insurance policy in place covering structural damages, the appropriate claims should be filed and funds received should be reported. This includes home insurance, NFIP policies, increased cost of compliance or ICC benefits, and other hazard insurance. Note, all applicants should have also completed the DOB insurance affidavit. If on the insurance affidavit form, the applicant marked yes, they did make a claim or received settlement payment, the monetary amount of that claim or payment must be noted in 2C. They should have attached the claims or settlement letter to their application or the DOB insurance affidavit to identify the amounts requested or received. Also, only settlements for repairs to the property itself should be considered. Any settlements received for personal property does not need to be included in the amount listed on the form. For example, if our applicant's insurance determined that the total settlement amount for repairs and expenses for both the property and personal property were for $35,000. However, the applicant had a $5,000 deductible. Therefore, they would only receive $30,000. So they reduced that $5,000 deductible from the amount to be considered, and of the $30,000 remaining, $5,000 was for personal property destroyed. So they also reduced that amount, and only $25,000 will be input into 2C to be considered assistance. In 2D, the applicant should list any other type of assistance received, such as nonprofit assistance or charity. The applicant should also list in the column C what type of other assistance was received. Then, the total amount of assistance received will be auto-calculated in row 27 based off the answers input into number 2. Next, the applicant should input all expenditures on the property for disaster recovery related to the assistance received. For example, our applicant received $25,000 from FEMA and $25,000 from insurance to make repairs to the damages. Therefore, they will demonstrate in the expenditures in number 3 that they used the $50,000 to make repairs on the home for the intended purpose of the assistance. In 3A, the applicant should input all expenditures on the property for repairs from damages done by the disaster or subsequent disasters. In order to complete this section, the applicant should complete the DOB Eligible Repairs Calculation Form. That is another required local buyout and acquisition form. We will discuss how to complete the DOB Eligible Calculation Form in another video. The applicant should look to cell F30 to get the total for eligible repairs to place in 3A of the DOB calculation form. In our example, the applicant has $45,000 of eligible repairs, so they will input $45,000 in 3A. In 3B, if the applicant received assistance from insurance or from a federal agency in order to pay off a mortgage due to the lender demanding a forced mortgage payoff due to the damages on the home, and the applicant did pay off the loan using those funds, the expenditure is eligible to be reduced from the assistance amount as it was used for its intended purpose. The subrecipient will input the amount of the forced mortgage payoff that the applicant paid. This amount is determined through the backup documentation provided by the applicant. The applicant will need to provide a letter from the lender that provides a statement about the funds being taken in accordance with the hazard clause outlined in the mortgage or Department of Trust agreement, due to the fact that it is not equitable or in interest of the lender to repair the property. There's no standard language that the lender will use, but it should include that important information. Our fictional applicant had no forced mortgage payoff, so they input 0. In 3C of the form, the applicant should input any losses that they paid to contractors for work that was never completed due to contractor fraud. Applicants will need to provide a copy of the invoice and payment showing the contractor's fraud. Then, the expenditures will automatically total in row 32. Also, in number 4, the form will automatically deduct the expenditures from the assistance received to determine the amount of assistance that could be considered duplicative because it was not expended for the purpose of the assistance. Number 5 of the Duplication of Benefits calculation form does not apply to the buyout or acquisition program, as homeowners do not put their own funds towards buyout or acquisition. Therefore, the subrecipient should place NA in number 5. Then, in number 6, the form will automatically calculate the estimated maximum award amount, subtracting the assistance determined to possibly be duplicative in number 4 from the applicant's total need in number 1. In our example, if the fair market value of the buyout is $250,000, the maximum amount that the subrecipient can offer to the homeowner for buying out the home is $245,000 due to the $5,000 that is duplicative assistance. Note, this amount may change if the applicant's total need changes. If the appraisal comes back with a different number than what was estimated in this form, the form should be completed again with the final appraisal number to determine the final maximum eligible award amount. For example, if Robert's appraisal comes back and his house is actually valued at $260,000, he will recomplete the form and he will be eligible for $255,000. Also to note, this form only calculates duplication of benefits. The subrecipient should also work with the homeowner to determine any liens that may be on the property that will need to be paid off and reduced from the offer amount at closing. Section 3 is the final section of the document. In this section, there is an acknowledgement that the applicant, co-applicant, and subrecipient certify that the information presented in the document is true and accurate to the best of their knowledge. They will also certify that they understand that false representation is considered fraud. Any person who knowingly makes a false claim or statement may be subject to civil or criminal penalties. The applicant and co-applicant also acknowledge that if they later receive funding for the same purpose as the CDBG DR funding, it will create a duplication of benefits, and the applicant and co-applicant will give back the duplicative funding. Finally, the form will need to be signed and dated by the applicant, co-applicant, and subrecipient. We hope you enjoyed this training on the Duplication of Benefits calculation form. If there are any additional questions during the completion of the form, subrecipients should reach out to their General Land Office grant manager. Additional videos covering the other required local buyout and acquisition forms are, or will soon be, available at the same location you are viewing this one.